Chapter 1. The Dawn of My Days. The year was 1869, a time when India was still a part of the vast British Empire. In a small coastal town called Porbandar, nestled on the western shores of Gujarat, a new life began. On the 2nd of October, amidst the gentle rhythm of the Arabian Sea, I was born, a tiny bundle of joy to my parents, Karamchand Gandhi and Putlabai. My father, Karamchand, was a man of high standing. He served as the Diwan or Prime Minister of Porbandar, a position of great responsibility. Yet, despite his influential role, he lived a remarkably simple life. He valued honesty and integrity above all else, teaching me the importance of living with honesty and treating everyone with respect, regardless of their social standing. My mother, Putlabai, was a woman of deep faith. Her unwavering devotion to God permeated every aspect of our lives. She would often tell me stories of ancient saints and sages, of their unwavering faith and their selfless service to humanity. These stories filled my childhood with a sense of wonder and instilled in me a deep respect for spiritual values. Life in Porbandar was a delightful blend of tradition and modernity. The town, though small, was a vibrant hub of activity. The aroma of spices filled the air, mingling with the salty tang of the sea. The streets were alive with the sounds of laughter, the chatter of vendors, and the rhythmic beat of traditional music. I spent my early years exploring the wonders of this small town. I would wander along the seashore, mesmerized by the ever-changing hues of the sky as the sun dipped below the horizon. I would climb the ancient walls of the fort, imagining the battles and triumphs of the past. I would spend hours observing the bustling marketplace, fascinated by the diverse array of goods on display, the vibrant colors, and the intricate craftsmanship of the artisans. My childhood was filled with simple joys. I would play with other children in the streets, engage in games of hide-and-seek and tag, and listen with rapt attention to the elders as they recounted tales of bravery, wisdom, and sacrifice. I would often accompany my father to his office, observing him conduct his duties with fairness and impartiality. These experiences instilled in me a sense of responsibility and a desire to serve the community. However, my childhood was not without its challenges. Like any child, I had my share of mischievous moments, often getting into trouble for my playful pranks. I remember one incident vividly. I had borrowed a valuable family heirloom, a silver necklace, without permission. When my mother discovered it missing, she was understandably upset. I felt a pang of guilt, realizing the gravity of my actions. This incident taught me a valuable lesson about the importance of honesty and the consequences of one's actions. Despite these minor mishaps, my childhood was a period of immense joy and learning. I was surrounded by love and affection, nurtured by the values of honesty, integrity, and compassion. These early experiences would shape my character and guide my path in the years to come. Chapter 2. The Seeds of Rebellion. School, for me, was a curious blend of fascination and frustration. I found myself drawn to certain subjects, captivated by the stories of history and the wonders of geography. I devoured maps, tracing the winding rivers and the vast expanse of oceans, imagining the journeys of explorers and the lives of people in faraway lands. History, with its tales of ancient civilizations and the struggles for freedom, ignited my imagination. I would often lose myself in these narratives, pondering the choices made by kings and queens, the sacrifices made by heroes, and the enduring impact of past events on the present. However, the joy of learning was often dampened by the rigid structure of the school system. Rote learning, the monotonous repetition of facts and figures, felt like a tedious chore. I craved a deeper understanding, a connection between the lessons and the real world. Instead of memorizing dates and names, I longed to understand the why behind historical events. Why did civilizations rise and fall? What motivated people to fight for freedom? I yearned to explore the interconnectedness of different subjects, to see how geography influenced history, how mathematics underpinned the natural world. The classroom, with its emphasis on discipline and conformity, often felt stifling. The rows of desks, the constant surveillance of the teacher, the expectation of silence, all these factors contributed to a sense of confinement. My mind, ever curious, yearned for exploration beyond the confines of the classroom. I longed for open spaces, for the freedom to roam and explore, to engage with the world beyond the four walls of the school. My imagination would often wander, drifting off to distant lands, imagining fantastical adventures and daring escapades. I dreamed of exploring the world, of experiencing different cultures and ways of life, of witnessing the wonders of nature firsthand. The emphasis on competition and the relentless pursuit of grades further eroded my enthusiasm for learning. I observed that many of my classmates were more concerned with achieving high marks than with truly grasping the subject matter. They focused on memorizing facts and figures, not on developing a deeper understanding of the concepts. This, I felt, was a misdirected focus, a distortion of the true purpose of education. True learning, I believed, should be a joyful exploration, a quest for knowledge and understanding, not a race for marks. A pivotal moment, one that would forever alter my perspective, occurred during my school days. A close friend of mine was falsely accused of wrongdoing. The school authorities, blinded by prejudice or perhaps by a desire to maintain order, punished him severely. Witnessing this injustice ignited a fire within me. I felt a surge of anger and indignation. How could such a travesty occur? How could innocent people be punished for crimes they did not commit? This experience shattered my naive belief in the inherent fairness of the system. It taught me that truth and justice were not always upheld, that power could be misused, and that the voice of the innocent could easily be silenced. The injustice inflicted upon my friend deeply troubled me. I began to question the authority of the school, the validity of its rules, and the fairness of its judgments. Why were some students favored over others? Why were certain voices silenced, while others were amplified? These questions gnawed at me, fueling a growing sense of discontent and a desire for change. This experience instilled in me a deep sense of rebellion. I began to challenge the established norms, to question the unquestioned. I started to express my own opinions, even when they differed from the prevailing views. I found myself drawn to the writings of great thinkers and philosophers, their words resonating with my own growing sense of dissent. This rebellion, though simmering beneath the surface, would eventually blossom into a powerful force that would guide my actions throughout my life. It taught me the importance of standing up for what is right, of challenging injustice, and of never compromising my values. This early experience laid the foundation for my lifelong commitment to truth and justice, a commitment that would ultimately shape my destiny. Chapter 3. The Voyage to England. At 19, a time when most young men were content to follow in their father's footsteps, I felt a restless yearning for something more. The familiar shores of Porbandar, though dear to my heart, seemed to hold me back. I yearned for adventure, for new experiences, for a broader understanding of the world. The idea of studying law in England, a land far across the vast ocean, began to take root in my mind. The prospect of such a long voyage, a journey into the unknown, filled me with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. The vast ocean, with its unpredictable moods and hidden dangers, seemed both alluring and terrifying. I imagined myself sailing across the endless expanse of water under the watchful gaze of the stars, encountering storms and calms, and witnessing the ever-changing wonders of the natural world. The preparations for the voyage were a whirlwind of activity. I bid farewell to my family and friends, their words of encouragement and blessings ringing in my ears. I packed my belongings, a small collection of personal items, a few books, and a heart full of hopes and dreams. The ship, a majestic vessel with towering masts and billowing sails, seemed to symbolize the grandeur of the adventure that awaited me. As the ship set sail, I felt a surge of emotions. A wave of nostalgia washed over me as I watched the familiar coastline of India recede into the distance. A sense of excitement bubbled within me as I anticipated the unknown wonders that lay ahead. And beneath it all, a tinge of apprehension, a natural fear of the unfamiliar, lingered in the depths of my heart. The voyage itself was an unforgettable experience. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, as the ship plowed through the vast ocean. I spent hours on deck, gazing at the ever-changing horizon, observing the playful dolphins leaping through the waves, and marveling at the breathtaking sunsets that painted the sky in hues of orange and purple. I read voraciously, devouring books on philosophy, history, and literature, expanding my horizons and broadening my understanding of the world. I also spent time conversing with the ship's crew, learning about their lives, their experiences, and their dreams. I listened to their tales of distant lands, of perilous voyages, and of encounters with strange and exotic creatures. These stories, filled with adventure and wonder, further ignited my own sense of curiosity and exploration. As we neared the shores of England, a sense of anticipation grew within me. I imagined the bustling metropolis of London, a world vastly different from the quietude of my homeland. I envisioned towering buildings, bustling streets, and a society unlike anything I had ever encountered. I was eager to immerse myself in this new culture, to learn about its customs, its traditions, and its people. The arrival in England was a sensory overload. The sights, the sounds, the smells, everything was new and exciting. The towering buildings, the bustling streets, the cacophony of sounds. It was all a stark contrast to the familiar sights and sounds of my homeland. I was awestruck by the sheer scale and complexity of this new world, a world that seemed to hum with energy and possibility. However, beneath the surface of this vibrant metropolis, I soon began to encounter a different reality. I experienced subtle acts of discrimination, the occasional snide remark, the ever-present awareness of my otherness. These experiences, though seemingly minor, left an indelible mark on my soul. They served as a stark reminder of the deep-seated prejudices that existed within British society, a society that prided itself on its civilization and its identity. Chapter 4. The Call of Duty. After completing my legal studies in England, I returned to India, eager to contribute to the betterment of my motherland. I set up a law practice in Bombay, a bustling city teeming with life and opportunity. I envisioned myself using my legal expertise to help the poor and the oppressed, to fight for justice and equality. I dreamed of a society where everyone, regardless of their social standing, had equal access to justice and the opportunity to thrive. However, my initial enthusiasm soon waned. I found myself disillusioned with the legal system, which often seemed to favor the wealthy and the powerful. The courts, I observed, were often slow and cumbersome, and justice was not always served impartially. I witnessed firsthand how the poor and the marginalized were often denied their rights, their voices drowned out by the powerful. I began to question the very foundations of the legal system, its inherent biases, and its inability to truly serve the needs of the common people. I felt a growing sense of frustration and a desire to find a more meaningful way to serve my country. My life took an unexpected turn when I received a request for help from an Indian businessman in South Africa. He had faced numerous difficulties and injustices due to the discriminatory laws and practices prevalent in that country. Initially, I viewed this as a temporary assignment, a brief detour from my legal practice in India. However, this seemingly minor undertaking would have a profound and lasting impact on my life. The voyage to South Africa was a long and arduous one. I crossed the vast Indian Ocean, experiencing the wonders and challenges of the sea firsthand. The journey provided me with ample time for reflection, for contemplating the challenges that lay ahead and the purpose of my own existence. Upon arriving in South Africa, I was confronted with a reality far harsher than anything I could have imagined. I witnessed firsthand the brutal realities of racial segregation, the daily indignities faced by Indians and other non-white communities. The laws of the land were designed to systematically discriminate against non-whites, denying them basic human rights and relegating them to the margins of society. I was deeply disturbed by the blatant disregard for human dignity, the dehumanization of fellow human beings based solely on the color of their skin. I witnessed the humiliation and suffering inflicted upon innocent people, the erosion of their self-respect, and the crushing weight of oppression. These experiences shook me to the core, forcing me to confront the harsh realities of racial prejudice and the urgent need for social and political change. I soon found myself drawn into the struggles of the Indian community in South Africa. I began to represent their interests, fighting against discriminatory laws and advocating for their rights. However, I soon realized that legal battles alone were not enough. The system itself was deeply flawed, rooted in a system of racial supremacy that permeated every aspect of society. This realization ignited a fire within me, a determination to challenge the very foundations of this unjust system. I began to explore new avenues of resistance, seeking ways to combat injustice without resorting to violence. This period of my life proved to be a crucible of transformation, a time of intense introspection, and a growing awareness of the interconnectedness of all humanity. Chapter 5. The Awakening in South Africa. My initial experiences in South Africa were a stark contrast to the life I had known in India. The vibrant, bustling cities I had envisioned were replaced by a society marked by stark divisions and deep-seated prejudices. Racial segregation was not just a social norm. It was enshrined in law. I witnessed firsthand the humiliating indignities faced by Indians and other non-white communities. They were relegated to separate and inferior facilities, separate schools, separate hospitals, separate public spaces. The very essence of their humanity was systematically eroded, their dignity trampled upon at every turn. I remember vividly the incident on the train in Pietermaritzburg. I had purchased a first-class ticket, entitled me to a seat. Yet, I was unceremoniously ordered to vacate my seat to make room for a white passenger. When I refused to comply, I was forcibly removed from the train, humiliated and degraded in front of other passengers. This incident was a turning point in my life. It shattered my naive belief in the inherent fairness and equality of British rule. The humiliation I experienced, the blatant disregard for my human dignity, ignited a fire of resistance within me. I felt a surge of anger and indignation, a deep sense of injustice that I could no longer ignore. I began to question the very foundations of the racial hierarchy, the system that sought to divide and subjugate people based on the color of their skin. I realized that true freedom and equality could not be achieved within such a system. I felt a growing sense of responsibility, a moral imperative to fight against this injustice, to challenge the very fabric of a society built on racial discrimination. The experiences that followed further solidified my resolve. I witnessed the plight of Indian indentured laborers, brought to South Africa to work on the sugar plantations. They were subjected to harsh working conditions, exploitation, and even violence. I saw the suffering of the black African population, their land dispossessed, their rights trampled upon. These experiences awakened a deeper understanding of the interconnectedness of human suffering. I realized that the struggle for justice was not just about the rights of Indians. It was about the struggle for human dignity and equality for all people, regardless of their race, religion, or social standing. I began to explore new ways of resistance, seeking alternatives to the conventional methods of legal and political struggle. I was drawn to the teachings of Leo Tolstoy, the Russian novelist and philosopher who advocated for nonviolence and peaceful resistance. I found solace and inspiration in his writings, his emphasis on love, compassion, and the power of the human spirit. This period of my life was a time of intense introspection and spiritual growth. I spent hours in quiet contemplation, seeking inner peace and guidance. I engaged in acts of service, helping the poor and the marginalized, striving to alleviate their suffering. I sought to understand the root causes of injustice, to identify the forces that perpetuated inequality and oppression. These experiences in South Africa laid the foundation for the development of Satyagraha, my philosophy of truth and nonviolence. I began to realize that true strength lay not in violence and aggression, but in the power of truth, love, and non-cooperation with injustice. I believed that by adhering to the principles of truth and nonviolence, we could awaken the conscience of the oppressor and bring about lasting change. Chapter 6. The Birth of Satyagraha. My years in South Africa were a crucible, a period of intense struggle and profound transformation. I witnessed firsthand the dehumanizing effects of racial discrimination, the daily indignities faced by Indians and other non-white communities. The laws of the land were designed to systematically discriminate, relegating non-whites to second-class citizenship. I remember vividly the incident on the train in Pietermaritzburg. I had purchased a first-class ticket, entitled me to a seat. Yet, I was unceremoniously ordered to vacate my seat to make room for a white passenger. When I refused to comply, I was forcibly removed from the train, humiliated and degraded in front of other passengers. This incident was a turning point in my life. It shattered my naive belief in the inherent fairness and equality of British rule. The humiliation I experienced, the blatant disregard for my human dignity, ignited a fire of resistance within me. I felt a surge of anger and indignation, a deep sense of injustice that I could no longer ignore. I began to question the very foundations of the racial hierarchy, the system that sought to divide and subjugate people based on the color of their skin. I realized that true freedom and equality could not be achieved within such a system. I felt a growing sense of responsibility, a moral imperative to fight against this injustice, to challenge the very fabric of a society built on racial discrimination. However, I also realized that conventional methods of protest, such as legal battles and political lobbying, were not enough. The system itself was deeply entrenched, resistant to change. I needed to find a new approach, a more powerful and effective way to challenge injustice. I began to explore alternative paths, seeking inspiration from various sources. I was drawn to the writings of Leo Tolstoy, the renowned Russian novelist and philosopher. Tolstoy advocated for nonviolence, emphasizing the power of love, compassion, and inner strength. He argued that true strength did not lie in aggression or retaliation, but in the unwavering pursuit of truth and justice. Tolstoy's ideas resonated deeply with my own evolving worldview. I began to question the very nature of violence, its destructive impact on both the oppressor and the oppressed. I realized that violence begets violence, creating a cycle of hatred and suffering. I sought to find a way to resist injustice without resorting to violence, a way to awaken the conscience of the oppressor and inspire them to change their ways. I began to experiment with various forms of nonviolent resistance, such as boycotts, civil disobedience, and peaceful protests. During this period of intense introspection, I began to develop the philosophy of Satyagraha, a term that I coined to describe my approach to social and political change. Satyagraha, meaning true force, is based on the unwavering belief in the power of truth and love. It emphasizes the importance of non-cooperation with injustice, of civil disobedience, and of peaceful protest. Satyagraha is not merely passive resistance. It is an active and courageous struggle for truth and justice. It requires unwavering faith in the power of truth and the inherent goodness of human beings. It demands discipline, self-sacrifice, and unwavering commitment to the cause. Chapter 7. The Return to India. After 2 decades of living and working in South Africa, I returned to India in 1915. The India I left behind was a vastly different country. A growing sense of nationalism was sweeping across the land, fueled by a shared desire for freedom from British colonial rule. The Indian National Congress, a powerful political organization, was at the forefront of this movement, advocating for self-governance and an end to British rule. I joined the Indian National Congress, eager to contribute to the struggle for independence. I believed that my experiences in South Africa, my understanding of the injustices of colonialism, and my philosophy of Satyagraha could be valuable assets to the movement. I envisioned a peaceful and nonviolent struggle, a movement that would awaken the conscience of the British and inspire them to grant India its rightful freedom. However, I soon found myself at odds with some of the more radical elements within the Congress. While many leaders advocated for more aggressive tactics, I remained steadfast in my commitment to nonviolence. I believed that violence would only breed more violence, that true freedom could only be achieved through peaceful and just means. My insistence on Satyagraha often brought me into conflict with those who advocated for more forceful approaches. Some argued that peaceful protests were ineffective against the might of the British Empire. They believed that stronger measures, even resorting to violence, were necessary to achieve independence. I firmly believed that violence was not the answer. I argued that true strength lay not in aggression, but in the unwavering pursuit of truth and justice. I believed that by adhering to the principles of Satyagraha, by appealing to the conscience of the British people and the international community, we could achieve our goals without resorting to violence. I sought to convince my fellow countrymen that nonviolence was not a sign of weakness, but a manifestation of true strength. I emphasize the importance of self-discipline, self-sacrifice, and unwavering commitment to the cause. I believe that by demonstrating the power of nonviolent resistance, we could inspire the British to recognize the injustice of their rule and grant India its freedom. My journey back to India was a homecoming, but it was also a new beginning. I faced the daunting task of translating my experiences in South Africa, my philosophy of Satyagraha, into the unique context of the Indian struggle for independence. It was a challenging endeavor, requiring patience, perseverance, and a deep understanding of the Indian psyche and the nuances of the political landscape. I spent the next few years traveling across the country, connecting with people from all walks of life, sharing my vision of a free and independent India. I organized workshops and seminars, explaining the principles of Satyagraha and encouraging people to embrace nonviolence as a powerful tool for social and political change. I also sought to address the pressing social and economic issues that plagued Indian society. I worked to improve the lives of the poor and the marginalized, advocating for their rights and empowering them to fight for their own liberation. I believed that true freedom could only be achieved when all members of society, regardless of their caste, creed, or social standing, enjoyed equal rights and opportunities. My early years in India were a period of intense learning and experimentation. I sought to adapt the principles of Satyagraha to the unique challenges faced by India. I learned from my successes and my failures, constantly refining my approach and adapting my strategies to the changing political landscape. This period laid the foundation for the many struggles that would follow. It was a time of intense intellectual and spiritual growth, a time of preparation for the momentous challenges that lay ahead. Chapter 8. The Champaran Satyagraha. My first major campaign in India was the Champaran Satyagraha, a struggle against the oppressive indigo plantation system in Bihar. The indigo farmers in Champaran were forced to cultivate indigo, a cash crop that depleted the soil and impoverished the farmers. Under the oppressive Tinkathia system, farmers were forced to cultivate indigo on a portion of their land, regardless of its suitability or the impact on their own food production. The indigo planters, mostly British, exploited the farmers mercilessly, forcing them to accept unfair prices for their indigo produce. The farmers were trapped in a cycle of debt and poverty, their livelihoods and their very existence threatened by the exploitative system. When I first heard about the plight of the Champaran farmers, I was deeply moved. Their suffering mirrored the injustices I had witnessed in South Africa. I felt a strong sense of empathy and a deep desire to help. I decided to travel to Champaran to investigate the situation firsthand. My arrival in Champaran was met with skepticism and apprehension. The British authorities viewed me with suspicion, fearing that my presence would stir up trouble. The farmers, initially hesitant to speak out against the powerful planters, were wary of my intentions. I began by immersing myself in the lives of the villagers. I visited their homes, listened to their stories of hardship and exploitation, and witnessed firsthand the devastating impact of the indigo plantation system. I spoke to the farmers, understanding their grievances, their fears, and their hopes. I quickly realized that the issue was not merely a legal or economic one. It was a matter of social justice and human dignity. The farmers were not merely victims. They were human beings, deserving of respect and dignity. They had the right to control their own land, to cultivate crops that would sustain their families, and to live with dignity and freedom. I decided to employ the principles of Satyagraha in my struggle against the indigo planters. I encouraged the farmers to peacefully resist the oppressive system, to refuse to cultivate indigo, and to demand fair compensation for their labor. I emphasized the importance of nonviolence, of peaceful protest, and of unwavering faith in the power of truth and justice. The initial response from the British authorities was hostile. They attempted to intimidate me, to discourage me from pursuing my investigation. However, I remained steadfast in my commitment to the cause. I continued to meet with the farmers, to organize peaceful protests, and to raise awareness about the injustices they faced. The Champaran Satyagraha was a landmark event in the history of the Indian freedom struggle. It demonstrated the power of Satyagraha in mobilizing the masses and challenging the authority of the colonial regime. It also marked the emergence of Gandhi as a prominent figure in the Indian political landscape. The Champaran Satyagraha was a resounding success. The British authorities were forced to acknowledge the injustices faced by the farmers and to agree to a settlement that provided significant relief to the affected communities. The victory in Champaran instilled a sense of confidence and hope in the hearts of the Indian people. demonstrating the power of nonviolent resistance in achieving social and political change. Chapter 9. The Kheda Satyagraha. Following the success of the Champaran Satyagraha, I embarked on another significant campaign in Kheda, a region in Gujarat. The farmers in Kheda were facing a severe crisis. A devastating drought had ravaged the region, leading to widespread crop failures. The scorching sun had baked the land, leaving the fields barren and the farmers destitute. The situation was dire. The farmers, facing starvation and destitution, were unable to pay their land revenue to the government. The British authorities, however, remained inflexible, insisting on the collection of revenue, regardless of the farmers' plight. They refused to acknowledge the severity of the drought or to grant any relief to the affected farmers. This callous disregard for the suffering of the people deeply disturbed me. I saw in Kheda a mirror image of the injustices I had witnessed elsewhere: the exploitation of the poor, the indifference of the powerful, and the erosion of human dignity. I felt compelled to stand in solidarity with the farmers, to fight for their rights, and to demand justice. I traveled to Kheda, immersing myself in the lives of the affected farmers. I visited their homes, witnessed their suffering firsthand, and listened to their heartbreaking stories of despair and desperation. I saw the impact of the drought on their lives: the emaciated cattle, the empty granaries, the hunger staring from the eyes of their children. I realized that this was not merely a financial crisis. It was a humanitarian crisis. The farmers were facing starvation, disease, and the very real threat of losing their land. The government's insistence on collecting revenue, while the farmers were struggling to survive, was not only unjust but also inhumane. I decided to employ the principles of Satyagraha in this struggle as well. I encouraged the farmers to peacefully resist the government's demands, to refuse to pay the land revenue until adequate relief measures were implemented. I emphasized the importance of nonviolence, of peaceful protest, and of unwavering faith in the power of truth and justice. The government, initially dismissive of the farmers' demands, soon realized that they were facing a formidable challenge. The farmers, united under the banner of nonviolent resistance, refused to back down. They peacefully defied the government orders, refusing to pay the revenue and demanding relief measures. The Kheda Satyagraha gained momentum, attracting widespread attention and generating significant public support. The farmers, inspired by the principles of Satyagraha, demonstrated remarkable courage and resilience. They endured hardships, faced intimidation, and yet remained steadfast in their commitment to their cause. The government, facing mounting pressure from the public and the international community, was eventually forced to concede. They agreed to suspend the collection of land revenue in the affected areas and to provide relief measures to the farmers. The Kheda Satyagraha was a significant victory for the farmers and a testament to the power of nonviolent resistance. It demonstrated that even the most powerful forces could be challenged and overcome through peaceful and just means. It also further solidified my reputation as a leader of the Indian freedom struggle, inspiring confidence and hope among the masses. Chapter 10. The Rowlatt Act Satyagraha. The year 1919 witnessed a turning point in the Indian freedom struggle. The British government, alarmed by the growing nationalist movement, passed the infamous Rowlatt Act. This draconian legislation granted the government sweeping powers to arrest and detain individuals without trial, effectively suspending fundamental rights and freedoms. The Rowlatt Act sparked widespread outrage and indignation across India. It was seen as a blatant attack on the basic liberties of the Indian people, a blatant disregard for their fundamental rights. I strongly condemned the act, calling it a black bill that violated the very essence of human dignity. I urged the people to peacefully resist the act through civil disobedience. I called for a nationwide hartal, a day of peaceful protest and non-cooperation. I encouraged people to close their shops, abstain from work, and engage in peaceful demonstrations to express their opposition to the act. The response was overwhelming. People from all walks of life, from students and workers to farmers and businessmen, participated in the hartal. Peaceful protests and demonstrations were held across the country, expressing the collective anger and defiance of the Indian people. However, the peaceful protests soon turned violent in some parts of the country. In Amritsar, Punjab, a large gathering of unarmed civilians was brutally attacked by British troops, resulting in a tragic massacre. This event, known as the Jallianwala Bagh Massacre, shocked the nation and further fueled the flames of resistance. The Jallianwala Bagh Massacre was a turning point in the Indian freedom struggle. It exposed the brutality of British rule and galvanized the Indian people to unite in their struggle for independence. However, it also cast a long shadow over the movement, raising concerns about the potential for violence and the need for maintaining discipline and restraint. I was deeply saddened by the events in Amritsar. I condemned the violence and reiterated my commitment to nonviolence. I emphasized that violence could never be justified, that true strength lay in peaceful and just means of resistance. The Rowlatt Act Satyagraha, despite its tragic turn of events, served as a powerful reminder of the strength of the Indian people and their unwavering determination to achieve freedom. It also highlighted the challenges of maintaining discipline and unity within a mass movement. In the aftermath of the Jallianwala Bagh Massacre, I sought to regroup and reevaluate our strategies. I realized that the movement needed to be more carefully organized and disciplined to avoid such tragic incidents. I emphasized the importance of self-restraint, of maintaining peace and order even in the face of provocation. The Rowlatt Act Satyagraha, despite its tragic consequences, served as a valuable lesson. It taught me the importance of careful planning and meticulous organization in any mass movement. It also reinforced my belief in the power of nonviolence, even in the face of extreme provocation. Chapter 11. The Non-Cooperation Movement. The events of 1919, particularly the Jallianwala Bagh Massacre, deeply shaken the nation. The Rowlatt Act Satyagraha, while demonstrating the strength of the Indian people, also highlighted the dangers of uncontrolled mass movements. I realized that a more disciplined and sustained approach was needed to effectively challenge British rule. After much introspection and deliberation, I launched the Non-Cooperation Movement in 1920. This was a comprehensive program of nonviolent resistance aimed at paralyzing the British administration through mass civil disobedience. The non-cooperation movement encompassed a wide range of activities: boycott of British goods, Indians were urged to boycott British-made goods, such as cloth, and to promote the use of hand-spun and hand-woven cloth, symbolized by the charkha, the spinning wheel. Boycott of British institutions. Indians were encouraged to withdraw from government schools and colleges, to boycott British courts, and to resign from government jobs. Non-payment of taxes. In certain cases, non-payment of taxes was advocated as a form of peaceful protest against unjust laws. Civil disobedience. Peaceful protests, demonstrations, and acts of civil disobedience were encouraged to express opposition to British rule. The non-cooperation movement quickly gained momentum, capturing the imagination of millions across the country. People from all walks of life, from students and workers to farmers and businessmen, participated in the movement. Students boycotted schools and colleges. Teachers resigned from government service, and lawyers renounced their legal practice. The boycott of British goods gained widespread support, with people embracing hand-spun and hand-woven cloth as a symbol of national pride and resistance. The movement also witnessed the active participation of women. They played a crucial role in the boycott of British goods, in promoting khadi, hand-spun and hand-woven cloth, and in organizing peaceful protests. The movement provided women with a platform to assert their political and social rights, challenging the traditional gender roles, and contributing significantly to the struggle for independence. However, the non-cooperation movement also faced challenges. Maintaining discipline and unity within a mass movement of such magnitude was a constant struggle. Instances of violence erupted in some parts of the country, diverting attention from the core principles of nonviolence. The movement suffered a major setback with the Chauri Chaura incident in 1922, where violence erupted during a protest, leading to the loss of lives. Deeply saddened by this tragic event, I suspended the non-cooperation movement, recognizing the need to reevaluate our strategies and re-emphasize the importance of nonviolence. Despite the setbacks, the non-cooperation movement had a profound impact on the Indian freedom struggle. It awakened the masses, instilled a sense of national pride, and demonstrated the power of united action. It also brought the issue of Indian independence to the forefront of international attention. The non-cooperation movement also had a significant social impact. It promoted the use of khadi, providing employment opportunities for millions of rural people. It also helped to revive traditional Indian crafts and industries, strengthening the rural economy. The movement, while ultimately suspended, laid the foundation for future struggles. It instilled a spirit of resistance among the Indian people, strengthened the bonds of unity, and paved the way for future campaigns of civil disobedience. Chapter 12, the Salt Satyagraha, the Round Table Conferences, and the Quit India Movement. The years following the Champaran Satyagraha were a period of intense activity and continued struggle. I sought to expand the scope of our resistance, to mobilize the masses on a larger scale, and challenge the very foundations of British rule. One of the most oppressive British policies was the salt tax. Salt, a basic necessity of life, was heavily taxed by the British government. This tax disproportionately burdened the poor, who already struggled to make ends meet. I saw in the salt tax a potent symbol of British oppression, a direct assault on the livelihoods of the common people. I decided to launch a new campaign of civil disobedience, focusing on the salt tax. I planned a historic march, a symbolic act of defiance against British rule. I would lead a group of followers on a 241-mile walk from my ashram in Sabarmati to the coastal village of Dandi, where I would break the salt laws by producing salt from seawater. The Salt Satyagraha, also known as the Dandi March, was launched on March 12, 1930. I set off with a small group of followers, walking slowly through villages and towns, spreading the message of resistance and inspiring people to join the movement. The Dandi March captured the imagination of the nation. People from all walks of life, inspired by our example, began to defy the salt laws. They collected salt from the sea, organized peaceful protests, and engaged in acts of civil disobedience. The movement spread like wildfire across the country. Women, who had played a crucial role in the previous campaigns, actively participated in the Salt Satyagraha. They organized salt satyagrahas in their own villages and towns, defying the British authorities and inspiring others to join the struggle. The Salt Satyagraha was more than just a protest against a specific law. It was a powerful symbol of resistance against British rule, a rallying cry for freedom and self-determination. It awakened the masses, inspiring them to challenge the authority of the colonial government and to demand their rightful place in the nation. The British government responded with brutal force. They arrested thousands of protesters, including myself. I was imprisoned in Yervada Central Jail, where I continued to guide the movement from within. The Salt Satyagraha, despite the repression, had a profound impact on the Indian freedom struggle. It galvanized the nation, exposing the weaknesses of British rule and demonstrating the power of mass civil disobedience. It also brought the plight of the Indian people to the attention of the world, garnering international sympathy and support for the cause of Indian independence. The Salt Satyagraha was a turning point in the history of the Indian freedom struggle. It demonstrated the power of nonviolence, the courage and resilience of the Indian people, and the unwavering commitment to the cause of freedom. It also laid the foundation for future struggles, inspiring generations of freedom fighters to continue to fight for a free and independent India. The years that followed witnessed a series of momentous events. The British government, facing mounting international pressure and recognizing the growing strength of the Indian nationalist movement, decided to initiate a series of talks with Indian leaders. These talks, known as the Round Table Conferences, were held in London to discuss the future of India. I was invited to participate in the Second Round Table Conference in 1931. This was a significant moment, a recognition of the Congress as a major player in Indian politics. I traveled to London as the sole representative of the Indian National Congress, hoping to negotiate a settlement with the British government that would pave the way for Indian independence. The conference, however, proved to be a disappointing experience. The British government remained unwilling to grant India full independence. They offered limited self-governance within the framework of the British Empire, a proposal that I found unacceptable. I refused to compromise on the demand for complete independence, emphasizing that anything less would be a betrayal of the aspirations of the Indian people. The failure of the Round Table Conferences left me disillusioned. I realized that the British government was unwilling to genuinely negotiate with the Indian people. They were more interested in maintaining their control over India than in granting genuine self-governance. Upon my return to India, I resumed the struggle for independence. I continued to advocate for civil disobedience, while also focusing on social and economic reforms. I believed that true freedom could only be achieved when all members of Indian society, regardless of their caste, creed, or social standing, enjoyed equal rights and opportunities. The years that followed were a period of continued struggle and resistance. The British government continued to suppress the freedom movement, resorting to repressive measures to quell dissent. However, the spirit of resistance remained strong, fueled by the unwavering commitment of the Indian people to the cause of freedom. World War II brought new challenges and opportunities. While India was deeply involved in the war effort, contributing significantly to the Allied cause, the Indian people were denied any say in their own destiny. This further fueled the demand for independence and intensified the struggle against British rule. In 1942, with the world engulfed in war, the Congress Working Committee met in Bombay, now Mumbai, to discuss the future course of action. The atmosphere was charged with a sense of urgency and a growing impatience with British rule. After much deliberation, the Congress Working Committee passed a historic Quit India resolution demanding an immediate end to British rule in India. The resolution declared, "Quit India," and called upon the people to do or die in their struggle for freedom. The Quit India movement, launched in August 1942, was the most widespread and powerful mass movement in the history of the Indian freedom struggle. It saw widespread participation from all sections of society, including students, workers, and peasants. The movement was marked by spontaneous acts of defiance, with people across the country engaging in strikes, boycotts, and acts of civil disobedience. Railway lines were disrupted, government offices were attacked, and acts of sabotage were carried out. The British government responded with brutal force. They arrested thousands of Congress leaders, including myself, and imprisoned them without trial. The movement was ruthlessly suppressed, with widespread violence and bloodshed. Despite the brutal repression, the Quit India movement demonstrated the unwavering determination of the Indian people to achieve freedom. It shook the foundations of British rule and brought the country closer to independence. The movement also highlighted the challenges of maintaining discipline and nonviolence in the face of extreme provocation. The widespread violence that erupted during the movement raised concerns about the potential for the movement to veer off course. The Quit India movement, though ultimately suppressed, had a profound impact on the course of Indian history. It demonstrated the resilience of the Indian people, their unwavering commitment to the cause of freedom, and their ability to rise up and challenge even the most powerful oppressor. Chapter 13, Family, Faith, and the Simple Life. My personal life, though often overshadowed by my public persona, was deeply intertwined with my political and social activism. My wife, Kasturba, was my constant companion, my closest confidant, and my unwavering supporter. She shared my beliefs, endured hardships with remarkable fortitude, and played a vital role in shaping my life and my philosophy. Kasturba, with her gentle nature and deep faith, embodied the spirit of simplicity and selflessness that I cherished. She dedicated her life to serving others, often working alongside me in my various social and political endeavors. Her unwavering support and unwavering belief in my ideals were a source of immense strength and inspiration. We were blessed with 4 sons, Harilal, Manal, Ramdas, and Devdas. Raising a family while engaged in a life of public service was not easy. I often felt torn between my responsibilities as a father and my commitment to the cause of freedom. However, I always strive to instill in my sons the values of truth, nonviolence, and service to humanity. I encourage my sons to live simple lives, to embrace simplicity and self-reliance. I believe that material possessions were a source of distraction and that true happiness lay in living a life of service to others. I often took them on walks in nature, sharing with them my thoughts on life, religion, and the importance of living in harmony with the natural world. Our family life was not without its challenges. Like any family, we faced our share of disagreements and misunderstandings. However, we always strive to resolve our conflicts through dialogue and understanding. I believe that true strength lies in the ability to resolve conflicts peacefully, to forgive and to reconcile. My relationship with my children was complex and evolving. They often struggle with my unwavering commitment to public life, feeling neglected and overshadowed by my political activities. I deeply regretted the time I was unable to spend with them, the sacrifices they made for my cause. However, I always strive to maintain a close and loving relationship with my children. I wrote to them frequently, sharing my thoughts and experiences, offering them guidance and encouragement. I encourage them to find their own paths, to pursue their own passions, and to live lives of purpose and meaning. My family life, though not without its challenges, was a source of immense joy and strength. It provided me with a grounding force, a reminder of the importance of human relationships and the enduring power of love and compassion. Chapter 14. The Dawn of Freedom and the Shadow of Partition. The years following the Quit India movement witnessed a series of momentous events. The Second World War drew to a close, and the British government, weakened by the conflict, finally recognized the inevitability of Indian independence. In 1947, after decades of struggle and sacrifice, India finally achieved its hard-won freedom. The country was partitioned into 2 independent nations, India and Pakistan. This partition, however, was accompanied by a horrific wave of communal violence, as millions of people were displaced and forced to flee their homes. The partition of India was a deeply traumatic experience. I was deeply saddened by the violence and bloodshed, the displacement of millions, and the deep wounds inflicted upon the nation. I had always strived for unity and harmony among all communities, and the scenes of communal violence filled me with grief and despair. I embarked on a mission to bring peace and harmony to the troubled regions. I traveled to areas affected by the violence, appealing to people to refrain from violence and to live in peace and harmony. I fasted unto death in an attempt to quell the communal riots in Delhi, a testament to my unwavering commitment to peace and reconciliation. Despite my efforts, the violence continued to rage. I was deeply saddened by the failure of my efforts to stem the tide of violence. I felt a deep sense of despair, a feeling of helplessness in the face of such widespread suffering. The assassination of Mahatma Gandhi on January 30th, 1948, shocked the nation and the world. My life's work, My unwavering commitment to nonviolence and peace was tragically cut short by an act of violence. My death, however, did not extinguish the flame of my ideals. My philosophy of Satyagraha, my unwavering belief in the power of truth and nonviolence, continues to inspire people around the world. Chapter 15, A Timeless Legacy. Though my physical presence was taken from the world, the principles I championed continued to resonate deeply. Satyagraha, the philosophy of truth and nonviolence, transcended the boundaries of India, inspiring movements for social and political change across the globe. Leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. in the United States drew inspiration from my life and teachings, employing nonviolent methods to fight for civil rights and racial equality. His famous "I Have a Dream" speech echoed the sentiments of my own struggle, emphasizing the power of love and unity to overcome injustice. Dr. King, like me, believed that true strength lay in nonviolence, in the unwavering pursuit of justice and equality. He understood that violence begets violence, and that lasting change could only be achieved through peaceful means. Nelson Mandela in South Africa also embraced the principles of Satyagraha in his struggle against apartheid. He spent decades in prison for his beliefs, but never wavered in his commitment to nonviolent resistance. Inspired by my example, Mandela led the anti-apartheid movement, employing strategies of civil disobedience, boycotts, and peaceful protests. He demonstrated that even in the face of brutal oppression, the power of nonviolence could ultimately prevail. My influence extended beyond political struggles. My emphasis on simple living, self-reliance, and environmental consciousness has resonated with environmental activists and advocates for sustainable living. My advocacy for rural development and the empowerment of the poor continues to inspire social and economic reform movements around the world. Gandhi's emphasis on the interconnectedness of all beings, the importance of respecting all forms of life, and the need to live in harmony with nature has found a renewed relevance in the face of climate change and environmental degradation. His ideas on sustainable living, such as the promotion of renewable energy sources, the importance of local and organic farming, and the minimization of our ecological footprint, continue to inspire environmental movements around the world. The challenges we face today, poverty, inequality, environmental degradation, climate change, and the threat of war, demand innovative and peaceful solutions. Satyagraha offers a framework for addressing these challenges, emphasizing dialogue, cooperation, and the power of love and compassion. It encourages us to seek common ground, to understand our adversaries, and to work together towards a more just and equitable world. My life's work was not merely about achieving political independence. It was about creating a just and equitable society, a society where all human beings, regardless of their race, religion, or social standing, could live with dignity and freedom. I envision a world free from poverty, hunger, and violence, a world where all people could live in harmony and respect. The dream of a just and equitable society remains as elusive today as it was during my lifetime. However, the principles of Satyagraha continue to offer a beacon of hope, a path towards a more peaceful and just world. My life, though tragically cut short, serves as a reminder that even in the face of adversity, the power of truth and nonviolence can prevail. It is a testament to the enduring human spirit the unwavering pursuit of justice, and the belief that a better world is possible. The legacy of Mahatma Gandhi is not confined to the pages of history books. It is a living legacy, a call to action for all of us to strive for a more just, equitable, and peaceful world. It is a reminder that each of us has the power to make a difference, to challenge injustice, and to work towards a better future for all. In the face of rising nationalism, increasing social divisions, and the threat of global conflict, the message of Satyagraha remains as relevant today as it was during my lifetime. It is a call to embrace peace, to cultivate compassion, and to work towards a world where all beings can live in harmony and respect.